You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Bible Guys.
Here we are.
We are here. And we're starting a brand new episode today, and we're super excited about it.
A brand new episode.
Yes, and
Yes.
we just filmed yesterday's episode about 3 minutes ago.
That was an old episode.
No, yeah,
this is brand new.
This is brand new and improved.
That's right. New and improved?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, why not? Hey, so today
Excuse me, I understand you've listened to an episode of the Bible Guys before. Oh, yes, I have. It's new and improved. You know, is those commercials.
Oh, I see.
Right, the old commercials where they get like man on the street things and they say, it's new and improved. Have you ever tried to use dish soap that didn't work? Yes, I did. Well, this is new and improved dish soap.
What kind of commercials? What kind of commercials are you listening to?
It's old time radio stuff. I used to listen to old time radio shows all the time. You never did, like Lone Ranger and all those. No?
I didn't.
Oh, I love the old time radio shows, and it was all those old funny, Clorox and all those things, And then it was always the old stuff didn't work, but now there's a new and improved one. So yesterday's episode is. But today is a new and improved Bible Guys episode.
I've always thought it was fascinating how people used to sit around the radio, though, right? It's like, and I've mostly seen that depicted in movies, right? Like Woody's Roundup,
Yeah.
What's the other one I'm thinking of in the movie where they all sat around the movie? Oh, Annie. Remember Annie, the musical Annie? Yeah. People would sit around and listen to the radio, gather around the radio.
So, we didn't have a TV when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I probably owned 300 old-time radio programs on cassette and records.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I listened to The Shadow, and I listened to
The Shadow,
Lone Ranger, and I listened to Gangbusters, and I listened to Amos and Andy, and tons of those old shows.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure I've heard an episode of Lone Ranger, although I've seen the movie. The black and white movies, or the you know what I'm saying, the series.
Yeah, I remember the radio programs came out before the movies.
I know that.
Yeah, okay.
But I did used to watch the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
He'd leave behind his silver bullets,
and then it always stopped. So there'd be a commercial, and the commercials were almost always man on the street type commercials.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Proof that what we're doing, other people like what we're doing now, right?
Got it.
That's what I was making fun of.
Well, hey, today we're going to dive into mailbags, and so
mailbags.
It has a theme, right?
Has its own theme. Mailbags. There you go.
Mailbags is actually only possible if you write in. So we just encourage you, send us an email at info@thebibleguys.com, or you can comment in on any of our, YouTube or Spreaker or anything like that. If you want to give us feedback or ask questions, we'd love to consider using them.
That'd be awesome.
And Karen G writes in for this.
Hi, Karen G.
And she writes this: which Bible character do you think had the best sense of humor? And then there's a second question: and which one would you want to be your best friend? And I guess that could be the same answer.
Ooh, best friend.
Who do you think had the best sense of humor?
Best sense of humor.
Well, I'm tempted to answer first because I don't want you to take my answer.
Go ahead.
John. Yeah, he's the one that he's like they both ran to the tomb, and then the disciple that Jesus loved arrived first.
Yeah, that's right.
With no reason whatsoever other than to say he was faster.
Yes.
Right?
Always. There was no theological issue about this.
Right. And the fact that he always referred to himself as the disciple that Jesus loved, and the fact that he oftentimes was way more colorful than the other gospel writers. I think that he had the best sense of humor. And so I like that.
Well, we know he was the youngest of Jesus' disciples, and he beat Peter, who was the oldest of Jesus' disciples.
Right.
So do you remember, I can remember the first time I beat my dad in a race.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember ever beating your dad or your older brothers?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's a big memorable moment.
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny. But yeah, that's a great one. I think Elijah was kind of funny.
Yeah.
I think, when he's mocking the prophets of Baal, hey, keep jumping around and cutting yourself. Maybe Baal's just sleeping. Maybe he's in the John. Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. So he's kind of I like his sense of mocking people. He's pretty hardcore. I mean, he also killed 800 of them. So there's that.
There is that. Yeah. Hey, I'm going to make fun of you, and now you die. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, who do you think could be like the one to be the best friend?
The best friend? Oh, gee whiz. I mean, obviously Jesus is not included in this,
I'm a big fan. Big fan of Jesus.
Big fan of Jesus.
Big fan. Jesus is my best friend.
Jesus is a friend of mine.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I would say best friend. Honestly, I'm going to pick Barnabas.
Barnabas. Ooh, the son of encouragement. Mm-hmm. He is the best friend.
He is.
He's the best friend in the Bible.
Yes.
All right. Man.
That's pretty good, wasn't it?
That was a good one. I think David would be a great friend. David was a great friend.
Yeah.
To Jonathan. Jonathan was a great friend to David.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can't go wrong with David.
Mm-hmm.
Having a king as a friend is not a bad thing.
Yeah. A warrior king.
Right. Whereas my guy is, only known in certain circles.
So he's going to go out and fight, and then he's going to write songs and sing, and then they're going to have big parties. Yeah. David's going to dance. I think David would be tons of fun. And I think it's crazy fun.
And you're safe with David. Yeah.
Well, it's because of his mighty men. Right. His entourage was pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would definitely
I think David would be the most fun to hang out with.
Okay.
Yeah. Or Solomon, because he's crazy rich.
Oh, Solomon would be pretty good.
Yeah, he's smart. He's kind of a smarty pants.
Yeah, Samson be fun, but he'd be unpredictable.
Well, yeah, and he was living kind of a wild life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hence the fun.
Yeah. Let's have David's fun. Let's have David's fun and not, David's dancing and having parties, but he's celebrating God.
Yeah, but Samson lit the tails of foxes on fire. Come on, man, that's mischievous.
Yeah.
Right?
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference between your sense of fun and my sense of fun growing up.
And you never know what's going to happen with Samson.
Yeah, that's the truth.
It's like, it's a wild Friday night.
Yeah. So you're picking Barnabas. He's a son of encouragement.
I am, yeah.
And he made everything better.
He did.
Everything Barnabas did, he made better.
Yeah, and he was the kind of friend that helped.
Yeah.
Actually helped.
Yeah, he did. Okay. Well, there you go. You choose Barnabas. I choose David as our best friends.
Yes.
And then as far as the funniest people in the Bible, you think?
I think John.
John.
And you chose Elijah.
Elijah's
These are good answers.
Yeah. Okay.
We've done well.
Man, we nailed it. We should just shut the episode down now. 7 minutes in, we peaked.
I agree. I agree.
Yes.
And by the way, even though that we did so well on that segment,
we nailed it.
You know who didn't do well?
Who?
As a king?
You're getting it this week?
Is Ahaz.
Wow.
He did not do well.
He did not. No.
In fact, he did so not well
he blew it.
That actually the only 3 big mentions and main accounts of Ahaz really point out how evil he was.
Well, speaking of that, in 2 Chronicles chapter 28.
Yeah.
Man, that was a great, terrible transition, dude.
Thank you.
That's all 3 this week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're on a streak.
Hey, by the way, think about how much we've jumped around. We went from Amos, we skipped right over 2 Kings, we went to Isaiah, and then we went to Micah, and now we're going to be in 2 Chronicles.
This is all kind of a hot spot of God engaging with people.
Yeah.
So these kings, Ahaz and Hezekiah, and who was the one up there in Jotham and all that, and then Micah has to go talk to all these guys. It's all happening about the same time. So there's a bunch of prophets and then a whole series of kings back to back to back to back to back that God's dealing with. And so this is kind of a hot spot of God communicating. He's about to go silent after he's done with Isaiah. Right. Malachi, he goes quiet. And so there's a window here of God intensely communicating with his people. So in 2 Chronicles chapter 28, it says, Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. He did not do what was pleasing in the sight of the Lord, as his ancestor David had done. Instead, he followed the example of the kings of Israel. He cast metal images for the worship of Baal. He offered sacrifices in the valley of Ben Hinnom, even sacrificing his own sons in the fire.
Yuck.
In this way, he followed the detestable practices of the pagan nations the Lord had driven from the land ahead of the Israelites. He offered sacrifices and burned incense at the pagan shrines and on the hills and under every green tree. Because of all this, the Lord his God allowed the king of Aram to defeat Ahaz and to exile large numbers of his people to Damascus. The armies of the king of Israel also defeated Ahaz and inflicted many casualties on his army. In a single day, Pekah, son of Remaliah, Israel's king, killed 120,000 of Judah's troops, all of them experienced warriors, because they had abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors. Then Zikri, a warrior from Ephraim, killed Maaseiah, the king's son, Azrikam, the king's palace commander, and Elkanah, the king's second in command. The armies of Israel captured 200,000 women and children from Judah and seized tremendous amounts of plunder, which they took back to Samaria. But a prophet of the Lord named Obed was there in Samaria when the army of Israel returned home. He went out to meet them and said, "The Lord, the God of your ancestors, was angry with Judah and let you defeat them. But you've gone too far, killing them without mercy, and all heaven is disturbed. And now you are planning to make slaves of these people from Judah and Jerusalem. What about your own sins against the Lord your God? Listen to me, and return these prisoners you've taken, for they are your own relatives. Watch out, because now the Lord's fierce anger has been turned against you." Then some of the leaders of Israel, Azariah, son of Jehonan, Berechiah, son of Meshillemah,
Wow.
Hezekiah, the son of Shalem, and Amasa, the son of Hadaliah, agreed with this and confronted the men returning from battle. "You must not bring the prisoners here," they declared. "We cannot afford to add to our sins and guilt. Our guilt is already great, and the Lord's fierce anger is already turned against Israel." So the warriors released the prisoners and handed over the plunder in the sight of the leaders and all the people. Then the 4 men just mentioned by name came forward and distributed clothes from the plunder to the prisoners who were naked. They provided clothing and sandals to wear and gave them enough food and drink and dressed their wounds with olive oil. And they put those who were weak on donkeys and took all the prisoners back to their own people in Jericho, the city of palms. And then they returned to Samaria.
There you go. There it is.
There you go.
So, so there's a write-up about Ahaz, and it's a part of our Life Application Study Bible.
Yes.
So we love the Life Application Study Bible, and we don't get any sponsorship from them.
That's right.
Even though we've been promoting them for how long?
Years.
And we definitely, and by the way, I've had people come up to me in the lobby, in the church lobby, and because they're new to the Bible, it's completely understandable that people may not understand that there's a translation, right? So then like the translation is like, what translation of the Bible are you going to read from? You know, it's been translated from the Greek. So it's, you know, the King James Version was back in the 1600s. There's the NIV, which is the New International Version. There's the NLT. There were people in the lobby that came up to me and they were confused. They thought the Life Application Study was a translation.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, no. So what we're reading from is the New Living Translation, NLT. That's the translation. That's the conversion into English. And then on top of that, that Bible is coupled with a study, and it's the Life Application Study Bible, and it's an actual Bible that puts together like helpful
little notes on key passages and explains the hard things to understand.
Yes,
and gives you some historical background. There's on this page that we're looking at right now, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different notes on key verses. Mm-hmm. It also has a whole chunk explaining who Ahaz was.
Yes.
And then there's a photo of some cuneiform tablet that proves that Ahaz was a real guy that we found in archaeology, and it tells the little story of how they found that and that he was paying a tribute to the Assyrian king, right?
Yeah.
So that's what you get, is you get some notes that explain it. You get some maybe some bigger elements that kind of highlight major characters and explain the big picture of their story. And then there's also some historical maps and archaeological proofs and stuff of what we're reading about,
which is extremely cool.
Yeah. And it's super approachable.
Right.
Right. So sometimes we were laughing. I had to read all those goofy names.
Dude, I said this before, but I said, and normally you get through them like a champ.
Yeah, but I stumbled today.
Yeah, but
these are hard ones. Meshillamoth, that one got me.
Like when we were determining like who was going to do the intro, the outro, who's going to read, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. I said, dude, you can read, and I said for two reasons. I said, number one, because you have a really good reading voice. I said, but besides that, you tackle these names like a champ, and I don't think I want to do it. I would just barf it all up. And today, when you came across
Hezekiah,
Meshillamoth,
and Hezekiah, those two back to back, I just couldn't get.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible.
I don't know why. So you read those names and you go, oh, I can't understand the Bible. Skip the names,
right?
Just you say that guy and that guy.
Sometimes,
that guy and this other guy.
Yep,
that's okay, right? Or I have a friend that'll just use the first letters,
right?
J, A was the son of J and B was the son of M, right? Whatever, because you don't know those names or the names of the towns. Don't get bogged down on those. The big story is this. Judah rebelled against God. God allowed, even though because Ahaz was so wicked, so God allowed the armies of Samaria in northern Israel to defeat them. Mm-hmm. Then this guy, Obed, he was a prophet. He goes and says, hey, so you defeated the army. Don't take the women and children captive and abuse these people and turn them into slaves. God's going to judge you now because of your own sins.
Right.
And then those four guys, I couldn't read their names. Those four guys speak and go, hey, you know what? We should show compassion. And so what do? They bound their wounds. They clothed them. They put them on donkeys, got them back home. That's a big picture. You can understand the story if you don't get bogged down in the big words.
Yeah.
That's it. And really, understanding is more important than being able to read a word out loud. That's the thing. And so what a good study Bible does for you is it gives you these extra notes. Like, Ahaz was so deprived that he sacrificed his own son to the pagan gods. And this was a practice of the Canaanites, whom the Israelites were supposed to have driven out of the land in the time of Joshua. Yeah. Because they didn't finish the job in Joshua's time, 400 years later, they're still tempted by the sins of that group of people.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that was Dagon, but Dagon was probably the god that they did that with.
Yeah, this one was Baal, it says.
Oh, this one was Baal. Oh, it does say that. Okay, because it's detestable to even think there were so many kings that decided to do that. And back then, by the way, they had so many sons because they slept with so many wives and concubines. Right. So they had sons everywhere, right? And so,
and then the sad thing to me, if we're going to really drive home an application today, the sad thing to me is you had Jotham was a good guy. You had Hezekiah was a good guy. But Ahaz just kind of throws off his family heritage at this point, right? Uzziah. Right. So Uzziah was a good guy following God. Uzziah's son, Jotham, is a good guy following God. Right. So Ahaz's father and grandfather were godly men. And he was so tempted by the way that the Samaritan nation was living, northern Israel, that he saw their temples, he saw their worship practices, all this magic that they were doing, all this stuff, and he decided he threw off the temple of God. He threw off the worship of the one true God and decided to embrace this other wickedness. And I think about, we had read a couple weeks ago how the kings of Judah had started making alliances with the kings of Israel. They shouldn't have anything to do with the kings of Israel because the kings of Judah were serving God and leading the people to serve God. And Israel was clearly always walking away from God. Always. They almost never had a good king that led them to follow the Lord. And instead, what happens is they start, Jeroboam allows his daughter to be married to the king of to the prince in Israel. Hey, all those things.
You got to give it up for him at least trying to unite the kingdom, right?
Yeah. But God said, don't hang out with these people, right? God has driven a wedge between the people who are following God's ways and sending judgment on the people who are walking away from them.
You're suggesting that was forbidden?
100%.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think so.
Huh.
Yeah. And so they shouldn't have been hanging out with them. God is always calling his people to get away from culturally, leave the culture of those who are rejecting God, right? You should be different. And they are hanging out with them. So if you hang out with them long enough, you're going to be like them. And so what happened was Uzziah didn't really bend over to their ways, and Jotham didn't, but Uzziah's grandson did, right? Which would be Jeroboam's great-grandson.
So it's a good time to go back to, I was going to read this little block on Ahaz.
Yeah.
It says, our heritage influences, but doesn't necessarily determine our life decisions. King Ahaz of Judah illustrates this truth. He turned away from the good examples of his father Jotham and his grandfather Uzziah, but his poor example seems to have little effect on his own son Hezekiah, who proved to be a great and godly king. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
The circumstances of the life of King Ahaz will fall into the general categories of bad and worse. When Judah suffered a debilitating attack from the rivals of Israel and Aram, the king ignored the opportunity to seek God's help and turned instead to Assyria for assistance. Ahaz's cowardly leadership forced Judah into the virtual slavery to the Assyrians. Soon, every evidence of Judah had once been a God-fearing nation was smashed, defaced, or tucked out of sight. Ahaz imported idolatry. He even presented some of his children as offerings to the gods, as he had hoped would rescue him from his nation from their disastrous situation. We share Ahaz's sin when, from beneath a load of failures and trials, we turn away from the good examples from God instead of repenting of any known sin and calling upon God for relief. We, like Ahaz, may appeal to every source other than God for aid. Our own abilities, our own money, our harmful habits. The results only serve to increase this tragic circumstances. Difficulties and mistakes will either devastate our faith or they will stimulate growth and maturity. The positive differences come from when we humbly seek God's help. Whenever the situation, trials that tempt us and turn away from God should instead spur us toward God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there it is. And by the way, that's also a sermon in there, I bet you somewhere. You know, sometimes the sons, they haven't paid the price. They haven't learned the lesson the hard way.
Right.
You know, you grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth and you don't necessarily understand the dangers of what it means to reject God, even though that he should have, you know. But, you know, when you're third generation of a good godly dynasty, you know, everything's been good for a couple of generations, right? Yeah. You don't necessarily understand probably the dangers of what it means to go off and pursue all these ungodly things. And Ahaz sure did model it, so much so to where I'm sure, you know, Hezekiah grows up and says, "Ooh." You know, my dad. Well,
Hezekiah saw 120,000 of Judah's troops get wiped out, and the prophets coming out and saying, you know, that happened because
your dad.
Because your dad.
Yeah.
Right? So he saw all the bad results. The fact that they literally mortgaged their future by trying to make an alliance with Assyria. As a matter of fact, the little historical element that's in this thing, it has the cuneiform, is Ahaz is paying taxes to Assyria. So this is what happens is when we start going against God's way, next thing you know, our wealth and our power and all those things begin to flow away from us, right? And this is what happens to them is Judah was so strong and so healthy and so prosperous. But then when Ahaz begins to walk away from God, they become very weak. And now he's paying out taxes to Assyria, trying to get some help from them. Eventually it wipes them out, right? They get wiped out by Assyria. But I think that you see Hezekiah seeing, man, my dad went the wrong way.
Yeah.
And Hezekiah wants to be a good king. He was moderately successful. I think he personally was a good guy. He made a couple mistakes, but he's a good guy. He's trying to lead the people back later on. We'll read about his life soon. But he learned, hopefully, from the wickedness of his dad and changed the direction. But his dad was just a bad guy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that is our time. So we will hopefully pick up with you tomorrow on the Bible Gus.